Well, good morning. Now, in yesterday's class, we were talking about self-regulation, and in self-regulation, we had talked about first important emotional competence, that is called self-control. So, we had seen that what are the important characteristics of the people who are high in self-control. So, they are, you can say, they are able to control their destructive emotions. They are all these things we had talked about yesterday. Now, the last topic that we had talked about, that we were talking about, is the how we can say self-control can be increased. First important thing that we had talked about to increase the self-control was to do the to increase the where is that? So first thing that we had talked about was to increase the self-awareness of the person, which can be done by two methods: mindfulness practice and the you can see the journaling, diary writing, etc. So importance of that we had seen in yesterday's class. Now today we will talk about the second important thing that we can do, a more practical thing perhaps that we can do in our day-to-day life to increase our self-regulation, self-control abilities. Write down further. Second point, the person should have the knowledge and practice of the knowledge and regular practice of the person should have the knowledge and regular practice of some techniques of the person should have the knowledge and regular practice of some techniques of stress management like yoga and meditation, physical exercise, or long walk, etc., etc. Long walk, etc., etc. The person should have the knowledge and regular practice of some techniques of stress management like yoga and meditation, physical exercise, long walk, etc., etc. So this is something next that we can do again. So it is found that everybody should have a good knowledge, but knowledge is not enough. A regular practice of also some techniques of stress management. The most commonly used techniques are yoga and meditation. For example, yoga and meditation is found to play a very important role in increasing our self-regulation abilities. So that works very well in increasing the self-regulation. But suppose, for example, yoga and meditation is not something that suppose yoga and meditation is not something that you prefer, that you like, that is not up to your interest, your liking, your lifestyle, your timing, etc. That is not necessary. Forget about yoga and meditation. Go to gym and do a physical exercise strongly for say 45 minutes a day or so. That is normally suggested. That also works equally well. So you can say that yoga and meditation is the mental way of self-control and physical exercise the physical way of self-control. Both of them are found to work equally well in a way. But suppose if in physical exercise, gym also is not your cup of tea. You do not like to go to gym and do the exercise, or your time does not permit, your work does not permit, your traveling etc. does not permit, whatever. Then we suggest that people should go for a long walk. That also works particularly in the nature if that is possible. That also is found to work very effectively and very well. So whatever suits you, or you can say some people often also even engage in some you can say physically very active, we can say dance forms also that has becoming much popular these days as well. So that is another thing that can. So whatever suits your lifestyle, choose one of them and well do regular practice of that. This is what we suggest. Now next important thing is that what are the advantages of these things in a way. Write down further, change the paragraph and then after write further. This has the following advantages. This has the following advantages. This has the following advantages. Number one, it resets the trigger point of our amygdala. So this is what this first of all does. It resets the trigger point of our amygdala. What is the meaning of resetting the trigger point of the amygdala? Well, think of it. Suppose for example, you can say what I mean here is something like this one. Suppose for example, this is the increasing level of stress that you are subjected to. Remember that every day we all are subjected to various levels of stress, different levels of stress. So everything that we do in our life creates some amount of stress on us. For example, well, getting ready for your workplace maybe on time is a stressful job. Well, finding your, you can say, deciding your clothes for that, some amount of stress. Driving on the road to your office, a stressful job. In the office, meeting a deadline, stressful. Working with other colleagues, maybe some of them may be irritating, also is stressful. Boss is the biggest source of stress in the workplace these days. So the idea is that, well, even this classroom may be stressful. I hope that not much, but even this will be stressful for us. So everything that we do is create certain amount of stress in us. Again, remember, stress is not always bad. Yesterday we have talked about two types of stress: good stress and the bad stress. Eustress and distress. So stress is not always bad. So, but everything that we do in our life will create certain amount of stress. Now, suppose for example, there is a person who, when he is subjected to this level of stress, then till this point he remains normal. He is able to manage himself very well, he remains normal. But the moment stress increases from that level, then suddenly he starts feeling the symptom of negative stress. He becomes emotionally hijacked, maybe. Now that may be there. So this point is called trigger point, because at this point our amygdala gets triggered. It becomes emotionally hyperactive, may lead to the emotional hijack also. So this is what we call the trigger point. Now if the same person starts, can say, those practices that we are talking about, physical exercise, etc., then this trigger point will be reset to a higher level. Earlier he was disturbed at this level, now he will remain normal till this level. In order to get disturbed, he will need to be subjected to a higher level of stress. His trigger point has been reset to a higher level. If he does more practice of that, then it may be reset to a still higher level. He was disturbed at this point, he will remain normal up to this point. And in order to be emotionally disturbed, that person would need to be subjected to a higher level of stress. So that is the next important thing, that so this is the meaning of that point that we talked about, that it resets the trigger point of our amygdala. So to a higher level, that is the first advantage of these things. More we practice, higher our reset point becomes, or higher our, well, you can say the trigger point becomes. More resilient we become to the stressful situations of our life. That is the first advantage. Second advantage is, write down further, when we become stressed, then it is easier for us to, when we become stressed, then it becomes easier for us to, come back to normal. It becomes easier for us to come back to normal. So that is the second important thing, that suppose for example the person is actually subjected to his level of stress, trigger point, he will become disturbed, no doubt about it. We all become disturbed sometimes or the other. We are human beings, we have a amygdala, we have a nervous system, we have a biochemistry. So we all get disturbed by that again. But once you get disturbed, then because of these practices, it will become easier for you to come back to normal. That is the second advantage. Thus, write down further, change the paragraph and then after write further. Thus, regular practice of, thus the regular practice of these techniques, thus the regular practice of these techniques make us, regular practice of these techniques make us less susceptible to stress, make us less susceptible to stress, comma, for a shorter duration, for a shorter duration and make recovery easier, for a shorter duration and make recovery easier, for a shorter duration and make recovery easier. So these are the three, essentially three advantages are there. First of all, it makes us less susceptible to stress. We become less vulnerable, more resilient. Number two, duration is shorter. We come back to normal sooner. And third, recovery is easier, that we do not require much effort to recover back to the normal. So these are the three important advantages that we have found of doing these practices that we talked about earlier. So these things are found to be very effective in making the person more resilient to the stress or easier self-control in a way. So we suggest here that everybody should choose one of them, whatever suits your lifestyle, your interest, your can say liking, disliking, etc., your work timing, etc. Choose one of them, whatever suits you, and then make them as an integral part of your lifestyle, as integral as you brush your teeth. So every day we should do that, spare some time for these, not only increase our physical can say well-being, that also helps in our mental well-being, mental health, the psychological well-being also, like for example self-control. So that is the reason that today many gyms have opened. They do not only offer the physical exercise, they have yoga classes also, they have walking session also, they have dance classes also like Zumba, aerobics, etc. So that these things are professionally easily available in our can say modern world, and well, everybody should make that as an integral part of our lifestyle. That makes it much easier for us to handle the stress or difficulties of life, which is an important aspect of self-control, emotional intelligence. So that is the second thing that can be done. Now third important thing that can be done is, write down further, sense of control. Sense of control. Now write down further, sense of control. If the person believes, write down further, if the person believes that he or she can effectively, if the person believes that he or she can effectively control, the source of stress, he can effectively control the source of stress, then he is more likely to control, himself as well. He is more likely to control himself as well. So this is the third important thing that we often suggest that we should encourage in the people, sense of control. Remember, control is not important. More important thing is the sense of control. So your belief is more important than the actual control that we have over the outcome of your life choices in a way. So that is the important thing. Just suppose, for example, think of it. Suppose we take the same example that I took yesterday. That suppose there is a young man riding a bike in a very dangerously high speed in a free road without any hindrance and all. Suppose, for example, this is time, and suppose in a very unfortunate turn of event, should not happen to anybody, but in a very unfortunate turn of event, suppose at this time the brake of his bike failed. brake of his bike failed. At this time, he realizes that my brake has failed. Now there are three time frames are there. In the first time, initially he had a real control in his hand and he believed that he has a control. In the second time, there is no real control. Brake is no longer there. He cannot control perhaps the outcome. The thing again, he is out of control, but he still believes that he is in control of his bike. And this third time frame, suddenly that belief is lost. In which time frame do you think that there will be sudden surge of cortisol in his body and he will start feeling the stress rather than challenge which adrenaline used to create earlier? Well, in the third frame, third phase, third time. So that whether you have real control or not, that does not matter. What matters is that whether you believe or not. As long as you believe that you are in control of your life chances, life situations, people are more likely to control themselves. It is much easier to control our emotional turmoil if we know that we are in control of our life choices. That is an important thing again. Now this leads to an interesting consequence. This has an interesting consequence for implication for the administration and management. What is that? Write down further. Change the paragraph and then after write further. This has an important implication for management and administration. This has an important implication for management and administration. And what is that implication? Write down one more line. The people who are affected by a decision should be made a part of the decision making process. People who are affected by a decision should be made a part of the decision making process at any stage of the process. Should be made a part of the decision making process at any stage of the process. This makes it, write down further, this makes it easier for them to bear the negative consequences of that decision. This makes it easier for them to bear the negative consequences of that decision. Now, this is the next important thing. This is the main implication of this thing. The idea is that when people are influenced by a decision, whenever you as an administrator or a manager, whenever you make a decision which is going to negatively impact the people and somehow make them a part of the decision making process, this will make it easier for them to tolerate, to bear, to carry on with the negative consequence of that decision. What I mean here is something like this, maybe in a very simplified language. Suppose for example, there are two officers are there, say A and B. Both of them have to implement a very difficult decision in their life, in their office. For example, suppose the office timing has to be increased from 10, has to be, you can say, advanced from 10 o'clock in the morning to 9. So everybody next month onward has to come a half an hour or 1 hour earlier than the original time. Now you know it is not an easy decision, it's a very difficult, most of the people will not like it to come to the office so early. A very difficult decision. Now this person on the one hand, any such decision you can imagine, this person on the, before he implements that decision, he forces people for that. Suppose he calls a meeting of all the members of the organization, and in that meeting he makes a proposal that because of some reason we have to change the office time in the morning from 10 to 9. People will say, no sir, it can't be done, we have so many work in the morning in the home, etc. A lot of debate happens, a lot of discussion happens, heated argument happens, and after all the heated argument, debate and discussion, etc., well, finally the decision is taken that no, it has to be done. and next month onward it is strictly implemented. This officer on the other hand, he does not call for any meeting, he simply informs everybody that next month onwards everybody has to come half an hour earlier in the morning, 1 hour earlier in the morning, and that is also strictly implemented. In which case do you think that the decision will be easier to implement? Of course, all of you can recognize that in the first case it will be much easier, in the second case it might be a little more difficult. So that is what happened here. That first officer, what did he do? By calling for a meeting, he actually gave people a sense of control that yes, in order to implement, while implementing that decision, we did consult you. You were a part of the process. And the moment we know that we are a part of the process, it becomes much easier for us to control ourselves, the impact of our emotional turmoil, emotional response. That is one important. That is the basic idea behind the psychological basis of the participatory management or even the consent in libertarianism. Consent. So the moment you can say, we have talked so much about the importance of consent in our libertarianism class. So consent is important also because of that if you take consent of the people, then it becomes much easy for the person to handle the emotional disturbance. But if the consent is not there, when the people think that they are forced into that decision, then well, internal disturbance is much higher in that case. That is what we have found in many research in our field. So that is one thing that we can possibly do to increase the self-control of the people, give them a sense of control, agency as we call it. So that is the third thing that we can do. And then finally, the fourth thing that we can do is a simple thing, write down proper nutrition, rest, leisure, etc. Proper nutrition, rest, leisure, etc. It is normally seen that nutrition plays a very important role in the self-control ability, because nutrition is food. Because self-control is always an energy consuming affair. Every time when you control ourselves, impulse control, then we will lose a lots of energy. It consumes a lots of physical energy in us. So that is found in many research that has been done. I will not go into those research here, but just remember that yes, many research has been done in which it has been conclusively proved that self-control is always an energy consuming affair, activity. So every time when you control ourselves, that energy is lost, and that energy must be replenished, because if you do not replenish that energy, then people will not be able to control themselves. Emotional can say turmoil will be much devastating in that. That is the reason that that poor people, extremely poor people, they are more likely to commit impulsive crime, because they are nutritionally deprived, physically weaker internally. Because of that, well, they are not able to control the impulse, and many impulsive crime like murder, rape, or molestation, harassment, small theft, etc. Well, they are often, you can say, more likely to be committed by the poor people, extremely poor people. It's not that there is nothing, there is something morally wrong in them. It is just that they do not have that energy in themselves, perhaps, to control themselves, to exercise the self-control. Upper, can say, richer people normally, well, they also commit many crimes again, but their crimes are more, you can say, non-physical crime, financial crime, corruption, or cheating, etc. So, but poor people often commit more crime of impulse. So that may be one of the reason why is it so. If we create a better nutritional condition among them, then perhaps self-control will become better. Rest is important, leisure is important. So that is what the idea here is that self-control, if you think of it, is like developing a muscle. Suppose, for example, you want to develop muscle in your body, then you must do two things. First thing is that you must go to gym and do lots of exercise. But a second very important thing that you must also do to develop muscle is to have protein-rich diet. Self-control is also like that. You must do mental exercise or physical exercise that we had talked about earlier in the second point. But along with that, there must be a proper food and diet, or the nutrition, etc. Rest and leisure is equally important. That is why we often say that work life should be such that people should get a proper food choices and all. Maybe rest must be there, weekly off should be there, maybe, or the leisure must be there, some entertainment activity, some vacation, some other entertainment activity in the office or somewhere else. So these things often create positive emotion that makes it easier for people to control themselves. That is the work culture type of thing that we should create, where people should have these minimum necessities of life. That makes self-control much easier for them to exercise. So that is one important thing. So that is how self-control can be increased. Before we proceed further, let's take some questions. I think there is a question. Yeah, one question. Good morning, sir. Very good morning. Nimai. Sir, sitting in yogic posture and pronouncing Om, does it help in controlling stress? How is it different from the yoga meditation? That is same. Nimai, that is same. Sitting in yogic posture and pronouncing Om. Basically, pronouncing Om alone does not matter. Does not matter. More important thing is that while pronouncing, as the people who support that suggest that, they also say that while pronouncing Om, you must focus on that pronouncement. You do not allow, mindfulness is important in that case. You must focus your attention completely on that pronouncement itself. It can be Om or it can be anything else for that matter. So, idea is that mind must be focused on one thing or nothing, not more than one things. So that is more like yoga and meditation. See, so that is also yogic posture is yoga. Maybe a certain posture is very important, and well, pronouncing Om and focusing your mind on that plays an important role. It works very effectively. So these are the things that we can do in order to increase the self-control. So that is how we understand self-control briefly here. Then after, second competence based on self-regulation is, write down, trustworthiness. Second competence based on self-regulation is called trustworthiness. Another very important, particularly important from your examination point of view. Because on this topic, as we will see shortly, at least 2-3 questions I remember that had been asked in the UPSC exam. There may be many more on that, but at least 2-3 questions I directly remember having been asked in the examination from this point, this topic here, this competence here. So it's very important from your, it appears to be an important competence from your examination point of view. Let us see what exactly trustworthiness is. Write down further a simple definition first. It is our trustworthiness, it is our ability to maintain, integrity. It is our ability to maintain integrity. It is our ability to maintain integrity. That is the first important thing that we have to understand here. The idea here is that integrity we have talked a lot about in many earlier class. In the just last few days, for example, we define integrity with reference to the self-awareness. How did we define integrity? Well, we define integrity as, well, when suppose for example your actions, suppose this is your action, and suppose your action is, suppose this is your action, and suppose it is guided by your own value system, then we say when your values guide your action, then this is what we call the ethical decision, and that situation is called a situation of integrity. Your values and your actions are integrated together. So that is what, how did we define? So what we talked about in the self-awareness class just a few days ago is what integrity essentially is. Your values guiding your action, your actions guided by your value, your actions derived from your value system. That is what we call integrity. Both of them are integrated together. Or in my introduction class, we had also talked about in the beginning of our course, that day also we had talked about integrity is something like this one. Suppose for example, this is your ideal self and that is your real self. To what extent the two converge together, overlap? This is the ideal self, suppose, and that is the real. So in philosophy class, this is how we define integrity, and in psychology class, this is how we define integrity. Both of them are same. Why they are same? Because ideal self is more about your value and the real self is more about your action. Ideal self is what? Your value system, that yes, what is right, your idea of right and wrong, and real self is what you actually do. So your action is the real self and your value is your ideal self. So when both of them are integrated together, they overlap together, then that is what we call the integrity. So integrity is the core of trustworthiness. Trustworthiness, by the way, what is the meaning of the word trustworthiness? Trustworthiness simply means, as you can see from the meaning of the word itself, that it simply means that how worthy we are of the trust of the people. So how worthy we are of the trust of the other people. That is the exactly meaning of the term trustworthiness. So how much people trust us? So it is dependent on that how much people trust us, how worthy we are of the trust of the people is often determined by the amount of integrity, the degree of integrity that we have inside us. That is how we define trustworthiness. Let us talk about some of the important behavioral characteristics of the people who are high in trustworthiness. So let us see what trustworthiness actually involves as a behavioral aspect of a human being. Write down further. The people who are high in this competence, the people who are high in this competence, number one, they act ethically. Number one, they act ethically. They act ethically. That is a simple meaning of the thing that we had already talked. Acting ethically means what? Acting on the basis of your own value system. Take your value system as a guide to your action. So that is already we have seen. Integrity essentially means acting ethically. When we act ethically, then we increase our integrity. First one. Second point is, write down, they build trust. They build trust through their reliability and authenticity. They build trust through their reliability and authenticity. They build trust through their reliability and authenticity. So that is second, a very important aspect of trustworthiness that we have identified. The idea is that they build trust. Remember, trust is always built. Trust is not something that is given to us in a platter that somebody will come, okay, this is trust, take it. No, trust is built by us. How do we build the trust? Well, there are two important things directly. There are other things also that we will talk about later. But these are the two most common things that, well, build trust among the people. What are these two things? First is reliability. And what is the meaning of the term reliability? Well, when I ask this question in my class, then many students say that, sir, it is dependability. Well, that is an implied meaning, not wrong. But exact meaning of the term reliability is consistency in your behavior, consistency in the outcome. You know, if you are a science student, for example, then suppose, for example, in a science, you can say social science or natural science, any scientific experiment must have, a good scientific experiment must have two important characteristics. This is how we define them. What are these two characteristics? Well, one is the reliability and the other is validity. What is reliability in a scientific experiment? Reliability of a scientific experiment is the consistency of the result. How consistent the result of the experiment is. Suppose, for example, I conduct an experiment and I get a result. Now suppose you conduct the same experiment tomorrow and you get a different result, then that will mean that my experiment was unreliable. Now suppose, for example, I conduct an experiment and I get a result, and anybody in the world at any place at any time, he or she conducts the same experiment under the same condition, gets the same result, then I will say that my experiment was a reliable experiment, because there was a consistency in the result. So when there is a consistency in the result outcome, then we call that thing as a reliable thing. So here also reliability essentially means the same thing. Idea here is that in terms of reliability, if you think of it, that there are three types of people. In terms of reliability, there can be three types of people. Suppose, for example, there is a person called A, B and C. Now A is a person, whenever he says something, whenever he says something, he always does that. Every time in the past he has done that. Now there is a consistency in his behavior in the past. So he is a reliable person. He is reliable because on the basis of the consistency of his behavior in the past, we can make a very reliable prediction that in the future also he will do the same. He is a reliable person. There is a consistency. We can rely on him. We can depend on him. We can predict about his behavior very, very accurately. He is a reliable person. This second person, on the other hand, whenever he has told you to do something, He has never done that, not even once in the past. Technically speaking, he is also a reliable person. In him also there is a consistency in his behavior. So, because of the consistency in his behavior, we can still make a prediction about him that since there was a consistency in his behavior, so in the future also he will maintain that and he will do the same. We can make a reliable prediction that in the future also he will be, well, like that only. We can still depend on him negatively, but nevertheless we can depend on him. He is a reliable person. So, for example, you can ask this person to do something and you can forget your work will be done. He is so reliable. You can ask this person to do something and you always make an alternative arrangement because you know that he has never done, he will never do it. He is still reliable, you can still depend on him that he will not do your job. So, make an alternative arrangement also. He will not cheat you, he will not deceive you. Most problematic are these third type of people. So, they sometimes do and sometimes they do not. Now, you never know what is going to be in the next case, is it plus or minus? They are unreliable people. So, you can say reliability, this person is reliable, this person is also reliable and this person is not reliable. Because of that, he will never be trusted. Trust, basic criteria of trust is a sort of reliability, a degree of reliability in our behavior. He is not reliable, he will never be trusted. But reliability alone does not determine trust. You can say along with reliability there should be authenticity also. So, this person is authentic also. He is authentic also, he is not authentic. And he is definitely not authentic. He is neither reliable nor authentic. He is reliable but not authentic. He is both reliable and authentic. He will alone be trusted. Now, what is the meaning of the term? So, you can say in this case, so authenticity. What is the meaning of the term authenticity, by the way? Authenticity, you can say, basically essentially means that whenever there is a overlap between the claim and the reality. Suppose, for example, I have a mobile in my hand. This mobile claims that it has been made by the company called Apple. And suppose this mobile is actually made by Apple, then I will say that you can say this product is an authentic product because it's claimed to be Apple and its reality to be Apple. Both of them are same. But suppose, for example, this, you can say, mobile claims to be an Apple, but it is made by some other company, then we will say it is an inauthentic product, it is a counterfeit product, it is a fake product. Because its claim of being Apple is not matched by its reality of being Apple. It is an inauthentic product. So, this person is authentic because he claims to do something and he does that. His claim and reality is same. This person, on the other hand, is inauthentic because he claims to do something but he does not do that. So, he is an inauthentic person, he is a fake person, he is a counterfeit person maybe. So, such people are never trusted in reality. In our philosophy class, if you remember, in one theory of ethics, we had talked about authenticity as a concept, as a term. Do you remember that? I hope that some of you may remember. We have discussed about authenticity in our class on existentialism. So, in existentialism, we have seen that acting in good faith was called authenticity also, alternative term. So, what was authenticity in the existential philosophy? Who is an authentic person or authentic act? Well, authentic act is the one in which you make a choice and you take the responsibility of that. Choice plus responsibility becomes authenticity. So, this person, when he says something, he always takes responsibility of what he says and does it. He is an authentic person. He says that he will do, but he does not take the responsibility of doing it. He is an inauthentic person. So, authenticity is also a necessary ingredient of trustworthiness. Reliability alone will not make you trustworthy. That is the second thing that defines trustworthiness. Third important thing is that, write down, they admit their mistakes. They admit their mistakes, limitations. They admit their mistakes, limitations, or weaknesses. They admit their mistakes, limitations, or weaknesses. So that is next important thing. Also, that's a very important part of trustworthiness. Admitting your mistake. There are some people, when they portray themselves, they present themselves in front of the other people, they will present only about their strength, and they often hide their weakness. Now, if you hide your weakness, what will be the consequence of that? Well, consequence of hiding your weakness, your mistake, etc., might be that suppose, for example, this is the ability that we have, total ability that we have. This is the total, you can say, all the strengths that you have. Now, if you hide your weaknesses and you tell people only about the strength, that your perception of people's perception about your strength will become much exaggerated. Of course, people will know about your strength only, nobody will think that you have weakness also. So, your ability will become, your perception will become, your, can say, the image will become highly exaggerated. So, such people who hide their weakness and limitations, they present a much larger than life picture of themselves in front of the people. They may be trusted for some time, but sooner or later that balloon gets burst by a prick of reality. And these people have a bigger downfall also. So, one person whose name often comes to my mind when I think about such people who always talk about their strength and strength only, exaggerated perception of strength, then that could be, well, Donald Trump. I remember when 2016, when he was fighting the election for president of America, then, well, he often used to say that only I can make America great again. Only I can solve the problems of America. So much so that I remember one incident that in the 2018, midway to his, can say, presidency, when he was addressing the General Assembly of UN, when all the great leaders of the world had gathered, great leaders, states, head of the state or the diplomats, etc., they all had gathered and he was addressing them, a world meeting. And in that address, he told them that in 2 years, my administration has done more than any other administration in the history of the United States. Now, when he said this, then, well, everybody in the room started laughing at it. And then he became a little embarrassed, and then after, well, he told people that I did not expect this response from you, but then, well, it's okay. And then after he proceeded with his speech further. You can watch this video on YouTube also, it is available. Now, in this case, if you make such a large picture of yourself, image of yourself, that, well, you can do everything. In 2 years, your government has done more than any or other government in the history of America, then are you not making much bigger claim that you can actually sustain by reality? So, such people often have a bigger downfall. Again, people start understanding their, well, fakeness in a way. So, one sign of, you can say, trustworthiness is that do not present yourself in a fake manner. Only strength keep on telling and weakness you hide. That will become a problem at the end. That will create a problem for you at the end of it. There are many people in India also like that. Well, I will not name them, but you can understand. Those of you who are intelligent, you can understand them, who they are. Achhe din aane wale hain. Well, they had already gone. Now, Amrit Kal has come. That also has gone. Kartabya Kal has come now. So, greater and greater era is coming and the smaller era is passing. So, so there are some people who often talk about only what they can do. They never talk about what they cannot do. But once that creates a big problem in our presentation of the self in a way. That creates a problem of the trustworthiness at the end of it. So sometimes admitting mistake and weakness is a very important aspect of trustworthy. I like to call that as honesty. Honesty. Honesty is an interesting thing. When we talk about integrity, then we often talk about honesty at the same time. We often talk about honesty and integrity. So, honesty and integrity, that is one thing that we often talk about. Now, how is it that honesty and integrity are different from each other? Can you think of it? I hope some of you may have thought about it, that both of them are similar thing in a way. Both of them, honesty and integrity, are related in this sense that we often say that integrity is an internal state that we have inside us. It is something that we maintain inside us. And honesty is something that we show it to the others. So, we often say that honesty and integrity are the two sides of the same coin. So, integrity is what I have and honesty is what I show to you. So, there are two sides of the same coin. Internal side is integrity and external side is honesty. We often say that being honest with yourself is integrity, and showing your integrity to the other people is honesty. So that is how the two are related to each other. So in this sense, again, if you present such a larger picture of yourself that we can do everything and you cannot, there is no weakness that you have, that is a lack of honesty. So Donald Trump was dishonest in that case when he claimed he knew that he has not done that much maybe. Well, that is a very bombastic claim, but that will be a dishonesty. You know that you are weak, but still you don't tell other people. So you know that we have certain limitations, we all have. You are not Superman, you are not God. But if you hide your weakness, present yourself like God, then you are actually being dishonest in that case. Dishonesty is a big problem of trustworthiness as well. So this is the next important thing that defines. They are, along with having integrity, they are honest with them or with the others as well. That honesty actually creates trust among the people. People will think that, well, you are not actually making a promise that you cannot keep. You are not trying to, you will never do something that you will never say something that you will never do. Because you are aware of, they are also aware of your limitations as well as your strength. So they will also not put extra pressure on you that ultimately makes you to fail in a way. There is a question related to that. Let me take that question. Sir, there are so many terms mentioned in our syllabus, sir, but could you tell us how and where can we find exact definition according to paper requirements? We are talking about in our class, these are the definitions, Pinto. Shubham. But sir, people advise never show your weakness because people take advantage of that. No, be careful. Why people will take advantage? People will trust you in that case. Good people. People will know that, okay, you cannot do that. Suppose, for example, if I tell you that, well, take admission in my, you can say, classroom, come to my classroom and I guarantee you that I will give you 200 marks. Will that be an honest thing to do? That is a dishonest thing to do because I know that I cannot guarantee your marks. I can only do one thing, that I can, you can say, help you to prepare maximum as much as I possibly can. After that, your marks depends on your ability to write and reproduce. So that will be honest. Honesty does not mean that. So idea is that if I am honest with you, then perhaps you will trust more. You will expect only what I can do from me, not more than that. So being honest is not a problem. It is a very good thing. And being honest means being honest about your weakness also. That I will tell you, okay, I can do this for you, that I am capable of, but I will not be able to that. I am not capable of doing that. So that is what honesty is. Honesty means that you must open up with both strength and weakness. People will trust you for strength and people will trust you even for your weakness. That is where trust is. So don't hide your weakness as far as you possibly can. Be honest with other people. Be balanced with other people when you are portraying yourself, presenting yourself to them. That is the third important factor. Fourth characteristics of trustworthiness is, write down further, they take tough and principled stand. They take tough and principled stand even if it is unpopular. They take tough and principled stand even if it is unpopular. So that is the next important thing. I hope you remember that exactly this thing we had already talked about in yesterday's class. That your ability to take unpopular stand, that was about the self-confidence. So as a person with trustworthiness, you must be sometimes willing to risk popularity. Because if you try to please everybody all the time, being popular, then trustworthiness may not be there. Sometimes you must risk popularity in order to do what you think is right. People will trust you more in that case. And that requires a lot of self-confidence. That's why we often say that trustworthiness requires self-confidence as a prerequisite. Without self-confidence, perhaps trustworthiness may not be there. Integrity and honesty may not be there. Honesty and integrity requires a certain level of self-confidence. That is one important thing. And last, another very important part of trustworthiness is, write down further, they confront the unethical actions of they confront the unethical actions of others as well. They confront the unethical actions of others as well. They confront the unethical actions of others as well. That is the next important thing here. The idea here is that in the first 4 points we have talked about, that trustworthiness requires you to do something about yourself. Sir, what is the relationship between the honesty and integrity? Madan Saha. Madan, we had already talked about that. I hope your query is satisfied. Sir, at times of interview, we should tell the weakness only which we can correct in the future. Is not? Well, be honest at least. A little, as far as you possibly can. Don't try to overemphasize your weakness. Emphasize your strength. But, well, if they ask your weakness, then you can talk about whatever weakness is appropriate in that situation. Your context of your job maybe. And well, you are right that we can be correct in the future also. Nimai, dishonest people can be trusted as they are dishonest honestly. Sir, please say something about this. What do you mean when Nimai? Dishonest honestly means what? How can be dishonest only? Honestly, you can see both of them cannot. They are opposite of each other. Something like, yes, darkly lighted room, dark and lighted room. Can it be together? So the moment you are dishonest, you are not honest. So how can you honestly dishonest? It is something like saying dry water. It is something like saying that, well, the lightened dark room. So both of these two things cannot be there. So if you are dishonest, you are dishonest, and you are honest, then you are honest. Well, last point, confront others' unethical actions as well. So in the first 4 points we have talked about yourself. If you want to be trustworthy, then you must fulfill these 4 points. You must have integrity, act ethically, you must be reliable, authentic, honest and confident. So these are the important things that defines trustworthiness for yourself. But what if you yourself are not doing anything wrong, somebody else is doing something wrong in front of you? What is your responsibility? What I mean here is something like this. Suppose, for example, there are 2 people, say A, he is a wrong person, and suppose there is a B, he is a right person, but he suffers because of the wrong of that. He is a perpetrator of a crime and he is the victim of that crime. And suppose you are a third person, C, not doing anything wrong yourself. Now, in this situation, do you think that even if you do not do anything in this case, then also some responsibility may be on you about that wrong? Can you tell me which theory of ethics that we had discussed in our class earlier will say that you are responsible even when, well, you are not yourself doing a wrong? Which theory of ethics will say so? Remember, it's an interesting thing to say, because every other theory of ethics that we discussed in our class will say that we are responsible only for our action. We are not responsible for actions of other people. But there is one theory of ethics will say that we may be responsible for the wrong action of other people as well. I hope you could figure it out. It was existential philosophy. So existentialism will say that no choice is also a choice, which has, as we have seen in that class, which has a consequence and we are responsible for that. So if you do not do anything, then also you are making a choice of not doing anything, because of which wrong will happen and you are responsible for that. You cannot simply say that I did not do anything wrong. So this is what this theory, you can say that theory said, and this is what we can apply here, that in this situation, even if you are not doing anything wrong, then also you are responsible for that. So this is what we mean by this particular thing. You know, in ethics we often talk about 2 types of evil actions. We often call the evil of action. So in this situation, this person is guilty of evil of action. He is doing something which is evil, which is wrong, which is unethical. But there is another important evil that we often fail to recognize, but that's a very, very important thing, is the evil of, we call that as evil of inaction. In ethics, inaction is as big an evil as action. If you do not do anything wrong, anything in that case, then you will be guilty of the evil of inaction. Inaction is as big a wrong in ethics as action is. So that is the problem of, that is the evil of inaction in a way. You are responsible for that as well. You know, there is a beautiful quotation of some philosopher. He said, I said, not philosopher, somebody, maybe some great person. As far as I remember, it was said by Napoleon Bonaparte. I think, but don't go for the name. Quotation is important. He said that world is bad not because there are some people who are bad. World is bad because the so-called good people are always silent. Now that's a very interesting thing to say, that the silence of the good people is a bigger contributor of wrong in the world than the evil of the evil people. So there are very few people in the world who are bad, like see, most of the people are good like us. But we, the so-called good people, are always silent. We often fail to recognize that we have a duty to interfere. We say it's none of my business, why should I interfere? And because of that, you can see that many evil continue in the world. If all the good people in the world, who are the majority, if they start opposing the evil happening, then do you think that evil can ever exist in the world? Evil exists in the world not because of the bad people. It is because of the silence of the good people. So that is what is problem. So in this case, you must actually take a stand. You must confront them. You know, almost 25 years ago, when George W. Bush Jr., after 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center, when America attacked Afghanistan, then at that time you can see that the George W. Bush said a certain thing that will become, that is very relevant from this situation here, language. He said in that case that when he started the so-called war on terror, he said that in this war on terror, either you are with us or you are against us. You cannot be neutral. Now, war on terror is more political connotation. Let's not talk about that. But in ethics, similar sentiments are very relevant here. So, in ethics, you are either with the side of the right or you are with the side of the wrong. You cannot be neutral. Ethics does not permit neutrality. Because if you do not do anything, then by default, you are an accomplice of the wrong. You know, by default, you are a side of the wrong. Silence of the good people always helps the perpetrator, not the sufferer, not the victim. So if you are silent, then you are an accomplice of, you are a helper of the perpetrator of a crime, you are an accomplice in that crime. In order to do the right thing, you must protest that. Only by protesting you can. In order to take the side of right, you have to do something. In order to be in the side of the wrong, you don't have to do anything. Sit quietly and you are already contributing to the wrong. So right action must be an action and wrong action can be non-action also. That is the idea here. So ethics does not allow neutrality, ethics does not allow, well, to remain a bystander. The moment you know wrong is happening, you are a party of that. You cannot simply say it's none of my business. No, it is your business because you know about it. The moment you know about it, you become a part of the situation. Either you take a side of the right or you are by default in the side of the wrong. This is what we mean by this last point, that they take, and you can say they confront the unethical actions of others as well. So these are the 5 important things that defines trustworthiness as an emotional competence. So before we proceed further, let me see if there is a question. Emotional quotient and emotional intelligence is the same term. Into slight difference is there. Emotional intelligence is the concept and emotional quotient is the measurement of that concept. Pinto again. Sir, we often notice in some debate, maybe in parliament or TV shows, that some people are not listened other people's view patiently. Sir, are they low emotional intelligence person, as we know that not listening others is one of the signs of low emotional intelligence? Yes, Pinto, but let us not go into the general thing. Let us focus on what we are discussing. Ask question only about what we are discussing right now. It did. Otherwise, we will be diverting from the topic. It will be different. Though, yes, short answer is yes. That is low emotional intelligence. Why so? We will discuss in a later class also. So, hold these questions on the topic to the topic where we are moving later on. So, ask only relevant question that is relevant to this particular topic that is being discussed in the classroom. So, this is what trustworthiness is. Now, as I told you earlier, that trustworthiness is a very important competence, particularly perhaps from the UPSC examination point of view, because many questions have been asked from this topic in the last few years. Let's take a few questions. One question was that a few years ago, it is a UPSC question. One question was that our society today is suffering from a trust deficit. Our society today is suffering from the trust deficit. What are the consequences of these trust deficit, and how can you make yourself trustworthy in the eyes of the people? So this is what the question was. Now this question you can write in three parts. First part of your answer should be that define trust deficit. How can you define trust deficit? That is simple. Trust deficit is a situation when there is a lack of trust between two people or two groups of people. There is a deficit of trust, there is a lack of trust. So, when trust is missing between two people, two groups of people, that situation is called a situation of trust deficit, number one. Then after, the major part of your answer should be that what are the consequences of the trust deficit. Trust, let me take a question first. Kaushik, in Russia-Ukraine war, India remains neutral. For this reason, can we say that India is silently in favor of the wrong side? Kaushik, this is a relevant question. So, ask such a relevant question that will make the class enriched. Well, from ethics point of view, well, that was, you can say it was true, because right and wrong, again, first of all, we should not make a judgment about that. At least we are not in a position of that. But neutrality in this case, India's neutrality in this case did help Russia. I hope that you can agree with that again, that India actually imported some oil, financed Russia. You can say when Russia was banned from the trade from many countries, India did open a trade, you can say. So, neutrality of India did help. We cannot simply say the neutrality of India was 100% neutrality. No. India's neutrality did help one party, Russia. Whether Russia was right and wrong, it is not for us to decide. I don't know much about that. But fact is that India's neutrality did help Russia more than Ukraine. So, neutrality is not something that is pure neutrality. In ethics, neutrality is impossible. The moment you know that wrong is happening, then neutrality is a choice. Neutrality is a side. By being neutral, you are taking a side. At least a side. Right and wrong, we will not know. I will not say about that. So, that is what we can say here. By remaining neutral, India did somehow take a side of, partially maybe, well, did take side of Russia in that case. Now, come back to that question. The second, you can say, the part of your answer should be, what are the consequences of trust deficit? And here we can see that trust deficit have many consequences. This is the major part of your answer. That trust deficit, first of all, hampers our personal relationship. Trust deficit have a consequence, first of all, negative consequence for our relationship. So, human relationship is always based on trust. Every relationship, if the trust deficit is there, if the trust is not there, then no relationship can ever exist in birth. So, every human relationship is based on, you can say, trust and all. So, without trust, with a trust deficit relationship, quality of the nature and quality of the relationship will be hampered. Just think of it. Do you think a family can exist if there is a lack of trust between the husband and wife, children and the parents? No family can exist. Will there be can a school exist if the student and teacher do not trust each other? If the parents and the school do not trust each other, no relationship can exist. So, no social institution, no individual relationship can exist in the society if, well, trust deficit is there. Number one consequence. Second important consequence is that trust deficit often increases at a larger society level. Trust deficit often increases the social conflict in the society. Often increases the social conflict in the society. So that is the second important. Almost any social conflict that you can see, one very important reason of that consequence, that conflict, is the trust deficit. Think of Naxalism. Naxalism is a question of trust, that tribal people do not trust the government and government does not trust the tribal people. There is a problem. Well, communalism is a problem of trust. Hindus do not trust the Muslims do not trust the Hindus. Communalism happens. Kashmir problem is actually a problem of trust, that Kashmiri people do not trust the Indian government and the government does not trust the Kashmiri people. Manipur, well, conflict, trust may be a reason for that also. So whenever there is a lack of trust, it often exacerbates the social division, social cleavage in the society, leads to social conflict. That is the second problem. Third important thing is that trust deficit also hampers the work of the administration. Trust deficit also hampers the work of the administration. In administration, normally, if the trust is there between the administration, government and the people, then even a difficult administrative work is accomplished much smoothly. And when there is a lack of trust, then even a simple work also creates a problem. It creates conflict in the society. That is the reason that that administration always tries to create a relationship of trust with every new DM or SP, for example, when they are posted, they try to create trust between them and the people whom they are in charge of administering. So trust always makes the work of administration much easy, less forceful. Lack of trust creates the condition when force might be used more by the administration. That is the third important thing. Trust deficit also hampers the economic development. It reduces the GDP growth also. It reduces the GDP growth also, because we often say that in order for a proper economic development of the society, in order to have a proper economic development in the society, it's very important that there should be a relationship of trust between the government, business and the people. So if the government does not trust the businessmen, then that will create a problem of development. Business and people do not trust each other, then that's why we often say that government must always create a policy consistency, for example, that will create trust. But if there is a policy changing whimsically every other day, then it will create a lack of trust, or can say doubtful circumstances that will reduce the economic development, economic activity, foreign investment, etc. So these three units of economy, they must trust each other. The more is the trust between them, stronger will be the economic development. Less is the trust between them, less will be the economic development. So it has consequence even for the economic development. Not only that, trust deficit also reduces the democratic tendencies in a society. We often say democracy, if you look at it, then we often say that democracy is essentially a system of trust. Democracy is founded on the trust between the people and the government. Because one of the basic principles of democratic justice system is that a man is innocent unless and until he or she is proven guilty. So I, as an individual, must be taken for granted that I am an innocent. I don't have to prove to anybody that I am an innocent person. If somebody accuses me of a guilt, of a wrong, then it is not my job to prove that I am innocent. It is job of the accuser, government for example, to prove that I am a guilty person. Innocence must not be proved, guilt has to be proved. Innocence must be trusted, innocence must be taken for granted. So that is the basic idea of the trust, you can say democratic justice system. We often say that in any society, more is the trust, the stronger will be the democracy. So there is a direct correlation between the trust and democracy. Remember, in our earlier class, we had talked about democracy, what is the meaning of the term democracy, and we have talked about there is a degree of democracy. Democracies are not categories that you are democratic or not democratic. No, it is a continuum. It is a degree, it is a scale. So in that scale, more is the trust, stronger is the democracy, more robust is the democracy. And on the other hand, it is seen that lack of trust often increases the authoritarian tendencies. Authoritarian tendency is directly proportional to, in that sense, trust deficit in the society. So in any society, more is the trust, stronger will be democracy, and more is the trust deficit, more will be this authoritarian tendency. That is the reason that you know that in any government system, whenever there is a trust deficit, then government becomes more and more authoritarian. They start using many authoritarian measures, like for example internet shutdown or section 144 or the preventive detention, UAPA in India for example. So when there is a trust deficit between the people and the government, then repressive measures by the government normally increases, which is authoritarian. So trust deficit leads to authoritarian tendencies, and trust leads to the democratic tendencies. There is a direct correlation between trust and the political system that we have. So that is one thing here. And finally, you can see that trust deficit also hampers the international relationship, international relations. So it is normally seen that between any two countries, if there is a relationship of trust, then even a big conflict can more easily and amicably and peacefully be resolved. But if there is a lack of trust, then even a small problem can escalate into a big conflict there. So that also is found to happen here. Just many people see that is a region that you know, whenever there is a conflict between two nations, like between India and China, India and Pakistan at the border, then the people at the border, soldiers at the border, they try to create a confidence building measures. What is that? They try to create a trust, because if trust is not there, then a small problem also can lead to you can say a conflict there, firing etc., and may lead to the loss of life of the people also. So they always try to create a trust deficit, situation of trust, confidence building measures they take at the border where the two conflicting parties are face to face with each other. So trust deficit always creates international relationship problematic. Many people might possibly say that Russia-Ukraine war is maybe rooted into some amount of trust deficit. That Russia does not trust the NATO, which is trying to expand to the borders of Russia, and NATO does not trust the Russia. That leads to a trust deficit, which ultimately led to the war also. Lack of trust deficit may result into a war also, as we have seen in the Russia-Ukraine situation. So idea here is that trust deficit has a consequence at every stage of human life, starting from the individual relationship to the international relation. Every stage you can see trust deficit has a serious consequence for the society. So in answer to that question, you have to write all these things in as small as possible. Word limitation will be there, stick to that. But these are the important consequences of trust deficit that we must realize, that we must recognize. So that is the second part of your answer. And then finally, third part of your answer was that how would you make yourself trustworthy in the eyes of the people? Now in that part, you can write all these things, that in order to make myself trustworthy, I will act ethically, I will try to be reliable and authentic, honest and confident, and take a side. Don't try to be, neutrality may also be a side. So even if I am neutral, then I will be aware that yes, I am taking a side of somebody. Neutrality is a side in that case. So this is what we will do. By doing this thing, we can make ourselves trustworthy in the eyes of the people. So that is how we define trustworthiness. That is the meaning of the trustworthiness. So before we proceed further, let me take some questions. Two questions are there. Biswajit, sir, if we take part those things in our society which are not related to us, then how we control our emotions? Not every part, but whatever you think, at least you have to have some. Again, confronting does not mean that you have to fight with everybody. At least take a side, support that, maybe on social media, maybe in the public speech, maybe. And emotional control will be much easier in that case. You are more aware of that what's happening in the society. Spandan Roy, trust deficit is a major challenge for cooperative federalism between central and state government. Can we write it also? Yes, very good, Spandan Roy. We can add that also. That democracy, you can say, extend that further. That federalism, it is a problem of federalism also. So between the state and the government and the opposition party leads to the trust deficit. Trust deficit between the two, leads to many problems of federalism that we are seeing in our country these days. Yes, very good point. Next question, pin 2. Sir, when we think about trustworthiness, it inculcates the thought of social contact. But in our surrounding, the major problem is that the lack of transparency between higher authority and the lower people. They even write as they have some code of conduct. Please say something about it. Yes, Pintu, you are right that lack of transparency actually leads to trust deficit. That is the reason that we say that one of the foundational principles of good governance is the transparency. So, transparency actually increases the trustworthiness of the administration. That is the reason that RTI, Right to Information Act, etc. has been brought up. Isn't it? So, code of conduct, well, that we'll talk about that in a later class a few days later. Code of conduct does prohibit, but at least there should be a proper transparency. People should know what the government is doing, what the administration is doing. And that knowledge will actually increase the trust. That will make the administration work much more easier. So, transparency is actually a tool of reducing the trust deficit, creating a system of trust. Government must be transparent. More transparent governments are normally more trustworthy. That is actually seen by many experiment and research and all. So, yes, you are right that transparency is an important aspect of trustworthiness. So, that is how we define trustworthiness, a very important goal. There was another question that I remember about trustworthiness was also that what is the role of trustworthiness and fortitude in administration? That was an UPSC question. So, in this question, of course, we can write in two parts, trustworthiness separately and fortitude separately. So, trustworthiness, 75 words you can write, define trustworthiness and think of its role in the administration. How does it make administration work more easy and comfortable? Fortitude we will discuss in tomorrow's class. So, that is how we can understand. So, there are many questions have been asked on this topic that we should be aware of. So, that is trustworthiness as an emotional competence. Then we will talk about the third, another very important competence based on self-regulation, that is called conscientiousness. 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 Write down firstly, it is our ability to take responsibility for our personal performance. It is our ability to take the responsibility for our personal performance. So, that is the next important thing. It is another very important competence based on self-regulation. We often define it as, conscientiousness is often considered as one of the core personality characteristics, personality trait. There is a famous theory of personality in the modern psychology called Big Five, you can say factor theory of personality. This theory tells us that a human behavior or human personality can be described almost completely in terms of 5 traits. And they often express that in the form of an acronym called OCEAN, Ocean. O means openness, C means conscientiousness, E means extraversion, well, A means agreeableness, and N means neuroticism. So, N is neuroticism. So, you do not have to remember all of them, but idea here, this is what I am mentioning because conscientiousness is considered as one of the, well, you can say one of the central characteristics of the personality of the human being. So, it is one of the very important competence here. Before we talk about that, let me see that if I think there is a question. Communalism in India is one of the major issues which is due to the trust deficit. So, sir, please discuss some measures to solve it. For the answers of ethics, we can write answers in both format, point wise and paragraph, Spandan. Yes, Spandan, you can write both, whatever you can say you are comfortable in. There is no preference that I will suggest you. In either way, you will get good marks. Content is more important, whether you can write in the point or I personally like point wise, but you don't have to personally like it. Personal liking of a teacher is not important. The content is more important. If you put proper content, then any format will do. Whatever you feel comfortable in, you can write. Alok, communalism in India is one of the major issues which is due to the trust deficit. So, sir, please discuss some measures to solve it. Alok, yes, Alok, communalism, as I told you earlier, that all the social conflict, including communalism, is because of the trust deficit. So, in these cases, we can say that the government has to roll. We may not be able to discuss that in much detail in our class. That is a more social issue, paper 2 of your course. But some basic thing we can talk about, that is very important, that the different communities may understand each other. There should be a proper, we can say, contact between them, interaction between them, some superordinate goal has to be ensured, where both of the communities should be made to work together to achieve a goal that benefits both of them. And we should agree on certain constitutional value like liberty, equality, justice, etc., secularism, etc., as a part of our public life. That is something that must be inculcated in the people. To respect the constitutional morality, that is the only way to create a more conflict-free society and create a trusting relationship. So, these are some of the things that we can possibly do. That contact hypothesis will say that the different communities must be made to contact with each other. Normally, segregation should not be there. Segregation creates a distrust. So, that problem in our society is that often we can say the different community are segregated in their social setting and all. So, they different area in the city, they hardly ever interact with each other. So, segregation is a bad thing. Again, there should be contact between them, interaction between them, that creates more trust. Segregation creates more doubt among the people. Then you can say inculcation of the constitutional values in us, constitutional morality, as we talked about in our earlier class. Superordinate goal, as we call about that, try to create an economic system where all the communities has to work together. We'll talk about these things in later class also. But otherwise, it is a social issue that you will study in your paper 2 social issue classes. Come back to this conscientiousness. So, it is an important personality trait. Let us see what exactly this personality trait actually mean for us. So, write down further. The people who are high in this competence, number one, they meet their commitments and keep their promises. They meet their commitments and keep their promises. They meet their commitments and keep their promises. So, first important thing is that about conscientiousness is that they are the people who are high in conscientiousness, they meet their commitments and they keep their promises. So, idea is that if either they may not make a commitment, but if they do so, then they ensure that their commitment or promises must be met to the last point that is included in that. In a way, you can say they are highly reliable, all the plus, the A that we talked about earlier. So, they are highly reliable people, number one. Reliability is high reliability, very extremely high reliability is an important part of conscientiousness, number one. Number two, write down, they hold themselves accountable to, they hold themselves accountable for meeting their objectives. They hold themselves accountable for meeting their objectives. Now that is second important thing that defines the you can say conscientiousness, accountability to the self. Accountability, if you look at it, what is the meaning of the term accountability? Accountability means that whenever we are doing something, then we allow somebody, we expect that somebody can ask us a question and we should be able to answer that question, what did I do, why did I do it? So this process of answering to somebody, well, about a performance of a person is called accountability. So for example, in an educational system, well, examination is a system of accountability, because in examination your examiner asks you question and well about your study, your preparation, your preparedness, and you have to answer to them. That is accountability in a way. In a democracy, election is a system of accountability where government has to give an account of their performance during 5 years to the people of India, who are the ultimate owner of the country. So accountability means that everybody has to give, when we have to give, every good system, ethical system often creates a system of accountability. So that is one thing. But one sign of, you can say, conscientious people is that they hold themselves accountable. They do not wait somebody else to ask a question, what did you do? They ask that question from themselves and they are ready for the answer that yes, I can satisfy myself about whatever I did or whatever I did not, and why so. So accountability to the self is an important part of the conscientiousness, number 2. Number 3, I don't further. They are organized, careful and orderly. They are organized, careful and orderly in their work and orderly in their work and are scrupulous in attending to their responsibilities. And are scrupulous in attending to their responsibilities. Now, these are some of the important things that defines conscientious people further. Well, scrupulous first of all. What is the meaning of the term scrupulous? Scrupulous means being very diligent, for example, being very thorough, etc. So these are the things, diligent, thorough, to the very strong. Idea is that when we do something, normally not so conscientious people, when we do something, that we somehow ensure that work has to be done. But they are the people, they do not simply somehow ensure that work has to be done, they ensure that work has to be done in the best possible manner by taking every possible consideration in mind. Every small detail must be taken into consideration. Every small requirement must be fulfilled. Every rule has to be followed. Every sub-rule, step, sub-step, procedure, etc. has to be followed. So these people have a very clear eye for a minute detail also. Every minute detail must be taken into consideration while doing a job. Eye for a detail is what we call being scrupulous. So they are the people that are very thorough in their work, very strong eye for the small detail also, that is organized, care. Organization, care, order, etc. are the other hallmarks that these people are known for. You know, when you can find some people around you that are very interesting people. When I was a student like you people, then one of my friend was there, whom we often used to consider a very good example of a conscientious person. Now, during his time also, student life also, in his library, in his home, he had more than 200 books in his library, personal library. And his books were so well organized that even in the dark of the night, if you tell him that I want this book from you, then he can touch the bookshelf like this one and he can take that book out. His books were so well arranged. So well arranged his books were that every book he knew that in which rack, in which section, in which position that book would be. That well arranged his books were. If you go to his study table, for example, then pen must be kept in a pen stand. It cannot be lying down on a table like this. In his kitchen, spoon must be kept in properly spoon stand. Table, you can say plate must be in plate stand. If you go to his bedroom, for example, of course, his bed will be properly kept, bed sheet, etc. But one most interesting thing that I often found about him was that near to his bed, well, there was a side table was there. And on that side table, there was a showpiece. And this showpiece was kept on 45 degrees angle. Always 45 degrees angle. And well, he had some reason for that, aesthetics, for example. Now, we sometimes, in order to apparently irritate him, we used to go to his bedroom, for example, and apparently, accidentally, we used to change the angle. If we change the angle of that showpiece, then we'll see within 5 minutes, he will come there. He will not fight with you. He was not a skanky person. But within 5 minutes, somehow he will go there and he will change the angle to the original position. The moment he used to see that, okay, that the angle is changed, he start having some itching in his hands, perhaps. In his hand, in his mind, whatever you can see. So everything in his home will be completely well organized. If you look at his laptop, or if you look at my laptop, for example, on the other hand, at that time, then every 15-20 days, I had to spend some time, 15-20 minutes, half an hour to clean up my desktop. Because whatever used to come from the internet that by default used to go on the desktop. And then afterward it was full, that I used to organize that somehow again. And because of that, sometimes it used to happen that I knew that I have a certain file in my laptop, but at the time of the need, I could not find it. Which name, which folder, where it is stored, I could not figure it out. He, on the other hand, his files were so well organized that every file will be kept properly in a folder, subfolder, 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 etc. So that so well that by click of a mouse he can find virtually anything. That type of organization that he was able to maintain in his workplace everywhere. So these are the characteristics of such people who are extremely organized, orderly, scrupulous, careful, etc. in their work, in their responsibilities, in their, well, life and all. So that is another important sign of a high conscientiousness. Third. Last one more. Right on further, fourth one. They are punctual and self-discipline. They are punctual and self-disciplined. So that is another important thing about the conscientious. Punctuality is a very important part. They are extremely careful about not only about the works, things and all, but also about their time. Time is a very important factor that they often take into consideration. Now, when I will tell you one example of this type of punctuality and difference of that with the conscientiousness. Well, when I was a student, then once I visited one of my friend's uncle's office, who used to run a detective agency in South Delhi, a very successful detective agency then. And he was, my friend's uncle was a retired major from army. So they are mostly, you can find such conscientious people in the army or defense organization perhaps. So after retirement, he started his detective agency and all, a very successful one. Now he told me, while the course of conversation, he told me that in his office, the reporting time was in 9 o'clock. Everybody in the office has to report to the office exactly at 9 o'clock. And people in the office had the freedom to be late by, say, 2 minutes. They had the freedom to be late by 2 minutes. If you are late by 2 minutes, no action will be taken against you. But if you are more than 2 minutes late and till 5 minutes, for example, then, till 4 minutes, for example, then, well, there will be a red mark on your attendance on that day. And if there are 4 red marks in a month, then half day's leave will be sanctioned to you, or half day's salary will be deducted. And exactly at 9:05, wherever this person may be, sometimes he may be in Germany, sometimes he may be in America, wherever he might possibly be, well, his receptionist used to give him a call, well, informing him how many people have actually reported in the office. Every day at 9:05, he used to personally get a report of all those people who had reported in an office. And if you are late by more than 5 minutes, some more complicated rule was there for that. Now, when he told me about this, then I told him, how can you do that? This is inhuman, this is atrocious. This is, You can say the violation, human rights violation, we look at the conditions of traffic in Delhi, 2 minutes, that's it. Then I told him further that had I been working in your office, then perhaps I will never be able to take any salary at all. To which he replied that had you been working in my office, I might have made you like that also. And then after he showed me the attendance sheet for last 3 months. And last 3 months, there was not even a single red mark was there, even on a single person's attendance. Nobody was late by even minute. Everybody had reported before 9. Nobody was late by a minute also, forget about 2 minutes. That was the type of punctuality that he was able to maintain in his office. But all those people who were punctual in his office may not be, they were punctual, but they may not be conscientious. That is where the self-discipline comes up. Because sometimes we are punctual or organized because the boss is so, well, strict in our office. You know, many such cases you can find that. Did you have, so there are some teachers, I know some of them, you may have some teachers like that, and suppose your class is starting at 11 o'clock. They will enter the classroom exactly dot at 11 o'clock, and then after they close the classroom, they will not allow anybody else to enter the classroom after that. And suppose your class is going to end at 12 o'clock, then they will not allow anybody to leave the classroom also till that. You don't have to go to washroom, water, nothing. You cannot leave the classroom before the class is over. Did you have any teacher like that in your, you can say, in your life also? I hope that many of you may have. In the college and university, you can have some teachers like that, very strict teachers. Now, in such teachers' classroom, everybody is on time. Every student is, because you know either you attend the classroom or not. If you attend the classroom, be on time, otherwise don't go. Everybody will be on time. But all those students who are on time in such a classroom, they may not be conscientious. So, because self-discipline comes up in that case. So, they are punctual because teacher is so strict. So, if you are punctual and organized because your parents, your teacher, your boss is very strict, that is not conscientiousness. Even if your parents, your teachers or your boss are not so strict about these things, then also if you are, then that is what conscientiousness is. Idea here is that this word, as is, we can appreciate from here, this word conscientiousness has been derived from the word conscience. This word has been derived from the word conscience. What is the meaning of the term conscience? Well, very simply you can say conscience is basically our idea of right and wrong. It is our idea of right and wrong. So, normally if you look at us, the not so conscientious people, then our idea of right and wrong is often very, you can say, flexible in a way. For a small wrong, if you do, we don't care for that. Chalta hai. It's okay. If I am late by 10 minutes, so what? Chalta hai. If my pen is not in a pen stand, so what? Chalta hai. We often have this chalta hai type of attitude that I don't care. For small things in life, we often ignore small things in life. So, that is what our concept. But these people have a very strong conscience. They think that if something is right, then right must always be done, even if it is a small right, like your pen remain kept in a pen stand, your showpiece kept in a proper place, or you be on the time in the classroom or in your office. So, if it is, or if wrong is wrong, something is wrong, then wrong should never be done, even if that is a small wrong, like being late by 10 minutes in a classroom. So, their idea of right and wrong is very strict, is very clear. Even a small right and a small wrong matter to them as much as the bigger right and bigger wrong. They have very strong conscience. From this word, this term has been, conscientiousness has been derived. So, these are the characteristics of the conscientious people here. Now, the next important question is that how many of you can claim that you are a very conscientious person, highly conscientious person? In most of the classroom, at least 1 or 2 students, not more than that, well, claim, sir, I am a very conscientious person. Very few students are like that. Can you tell me, in our philosophy class when we were discussing, then at least there was one philosopher, when I mentioned, I was trying to describe his life, you can say, then I had used this term a number of times. There I had said that he was a highly conscientious person. A number of times I had used this word. Can you tell me who that philosopher was? I hope all of you might have already thought about him. He was Immanuel Kant. So, Immanuel Kant was a highly conscientious. Every day, as I told you in that class, exactly at 3 o'clock, he used to go for a walk. And he was so regular for his walk for 15 minutes that people in Königsberg used to set their watch by seeing Kant. Town clock owner of Königsberg used to set the town clock looking at Immanuel Kant rather than the reverse. So that was the type of conscientiousness that Immanuel Kant had. So in philosophy, we often consider Immanuel Kant as a classic example of a highly conscientious person. So that is how conscientiousness can be understood. Yes, you are right. Kant. But a very high conscientiousness may not always be good. It may create a little problem also. So it's important for us to understand the negative side of conscientiousness a little. So that's what we'll talk about next. So change the paragraph and then after write further. Can't, yes. Write down further, change the paragraph and then after write further. A very high conscientiousness, may become problematic also, in the following conditions. So there are two conditions under which conscientiousness can become a problem. So those people who are very high in conscientiousness, they should take care of these two things much more carefully. What are these two things that makes conscientiousness problematic? Let's talk about briefly. First one, write down. In the absence of empathy, it may hamper their relationship because they set a very high standard of behavior for themselves. And start expecting the same from others as well. Which others may not fulfill. Which the others may not fulfill. So this is where the problem can actually become. Idea here is that such people who set a very high standard of themselves. Of course, so all these things that we talked about is not an easy for normal people to follow. So it's very high standard of behavior for person in day-to-day life. That is a great thing to have. But problem occurs when they start expecting the same from others, which others may not fulfill. Suppose, for example, we agree together that tomorrow, suppose we will meet somewhere. And suppose we agree that, okay, we will meet at say 9 o'clock in the morning. We meet at somewhere at 9 o'clock. Now, you are a very conscientious person. You reach on the venue exactly at 9 o'clock. But suppose I am not that conscientious then. Suppose I am late by say 15 minutes. And you start fighting with me that, sir, because of you 15 minutes of my life have been wasted. And if you start fighting with everybody like that who is not that punctual, not that organized, then don't you think that your relationship will suffer in that case? People will start thinking you as a finicky person maybe. That is where whimsical person maybe. That is where we can say the problem can occur. So such people must be careful that they should have high empathy. Empathy we'll talk about in day after tomorrow's class maybe. Empathy is an important thing that we have to understand, maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. So the idea is that such people, empathy means here simply we can say empathy means our ability to understand other people from their point of view, not from our point of view. We all have our own point of view about what should be a good life. So do not impose your standard of behavior on somebody else. So you may be very punctual, that's a very good thing, but other people may not be that punctual. It is their life. Let them decide what they want to do in their life. So that is what we can say is there. So such people must be clear that do not judge other people from your standard. Give them the leverage, give them the freedom to live their life, others' life the way others want to, their own standard. So that is one important thing where high conscientiousness often becomes a problem. Then after, second important thing, right on further, when it takes the form of blind conformity to rules. When it takes the form of a blind conformity to rules, then when it takes the form of a blind conformity to rules, then it may reduce their creativity. When it takes the blind conformity, it takes the form of blind conformity to rules, then it may reduce their creativity. So that is the next important thing. Sometimes you can say such people become blind to the rules. Rules must be followed under any situation. And when you always follow the rules without any thinking about what, because rules are always made for the sake of the old situation, solution. So if you always blindly follow the rules, then ultimately, well, your creativity will suffer, because creativity requires sometimes that you have to go beyond the rules also. Such people never think out of the box. They never think beyond the rules. They become, as in Hindi we often say, sort of lakir ke fakir, that always be on the line rather than looking here and there to find something new in their life. So their life becomes a little dull life in that sense, that, well, extremely you can say conforming, less you can say creative. That can become a problem, that it reduces the creativity of such people sometimes when it becomes blind. But not always. Remember, Kant was a conscientious person, but he was not lack of creativity. He was a highly creative person. So it is one lacuna as a drawback that you have to handle. Kant was able to handle, we all can handle that. So write down one more line here, change the paragraph and then after write further. Thus a very high conformity may reduce our creativity. Sorry, a very high conscientiousness, sorry. A very high conscientiousness may reduce our creativity, but a very low conscientiousness may make us a mere dreamer. A very low conscientiousness may make us a mere dreamer. So here we often say that the conscientiousness, we can say, can be considered as a scale here, as a continuum here. It's not that you are or you are not. You are more or less. More or less is the difference. So it is a continuum of that. The idea is that people who are very high on that scale, they become less creative, but the people who are very low on that scale, they often become dreamers. They dream big in their life, but their dreams are never realized. Because in order to realize your dream, well, some amount of self-discipline, punctuality, organization or thoroughness, scrupulousness, responsibility, sense of accountability, etc., commitment, promise, etc., are very important part of a successful life. So such people dream big, but their dreams are never realized in reality. So that is where the problem comes. So the idea is that on this scale, we should be more on the right side of that scale. Well, without being blind and with certain empathy. So, with empathy and without being blind, if we are high conscientious, well, that is a very, very important personality trait that we can possibly have, that will play a very important role in our success in any profession, any job, any work that we take for ourselves. So, that is how we define conscientiousness as a emotional competence. Now, next important competence, this is all about conscientiousness. Then after, fourth competence that we will talk about is there any question relevant? Yes, can't. Right now, fourth one is called adaptability. Adaptability is another very important competence that we have to understand. It is particularly important for civil service also, as we will see later on. So, what is that adaptability that we have to talk about here? It is important for civil service because you know that government, they have not yet asked any direct question on adaptability, but I do believe that sometimes in the near future they can actually ask this. So, because the government of India actually has written in its Government of India has actually written in its website, DOPT, Department of Personnel and Training, that adaptability is one competence that they are looking for in the new recruit in the civil service. So, you people need to be adaptable in that sense. So, that is important for civil service here. But, sir, what is voice of conscientiousness and the crisis of conscientiousness? No, Pintu, there is nothing called voice of conscientiousness or can say crisis of consciousness. It is the voice of conscience or crisis of conscience. Mind the words that can say that is asked. These words are very, very different. Voice of conscience and conscientiousness, they are two different things. Voice of conscience means that how clear your idea of right and wrong is. Is it? So, voice of conscience is, we can say a crisis of conscience is that what we have discussed in that self-awareness class yesterday also itself. When we talked about when the people have, can say, two choices and they are not able to clarify what is right and what is wrong. I gave you the example of Farhan Qureshi. He wanted to become a photographer and he did not want to hurt his father. So, he was facing a crisis of conscience. His conscience was not able to guide him what to do. Should he risk the ire of his father or should he sacrifice his career as a photographer? Gandhi had a crisis of conscience when he wanted to decide whether to call the non-cooperation movement off or not. So, whenever our values are not able to clearly guide us what is right and what is wrong, then that situation is called the crisis of conscience, and self-awareness often helps us to resolve that crisis. That was voice of conscience and crisis of conscience. Voice of conscience help us to resolve a crisis of conscience if you are able to listen to that appropriately. So, that was voice of conscience and crisis of conscience here. Now, we will talk about the fourth important competence here on self-regulation, that is adaptability, but I think we will talk about adaptability after the break. So, let us take a break, then after we will start that, there will be discontinuity for that. So,